When you add integers with different signs, the rule is to subtract and then keep the sign of the larger. If we had 4 plus negative 5 here, 4 is positive and 5 is negative, so they have different signs. So I'm going to subtract. I always subtract the larger number minus the smaller number. So let's ignore the signs. I take the larger number 5 minus the smaller number 4. 5 minus 4 I know is 1. After I subtract, then in my answer I keep the sign of the larger number, or we could say the big guy wins. And so if we ignore their signs, which one is bigger? Which one's the big guy? Is 4 bigger than 5 or 5 bigger than 4? Well, 5 is bigger than 4, right? We would say it has the greater absolute value. It's the furthest away from 0. And so what we're going to do is we're going to keep its sign. Its sign is negative, and so our answer will be negative 1. 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. Here we have 6 plus negative 3. 6 is positive, 3 is negative. They have different signs, so I'm going to subtract larger minus smaller. 6 minus 3 equals 3. Then I'm going to keep the sign of the larger number. 6, negative 3. Which one's furthest away from 0? Which one's the big guy? 6 is, right? 6 is the big guy. Its sign's positive, and so in my answer I keep its sign. Positive 3. We can model this with counters. If we use black counters for positive and red for negative, 4 plus negative 5 means I have 4 positives, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 negatives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, a 0 pair consists of 1 positive and 1 negative, and 0 pairs cancel each other out. And so I have a positive and a negative. They cancel each other out. They're gone. There's another 0 pair, 0 pair, 0 pair. And so after all the 0 pairs cancel out, what I'm left with is 1 negative. And if I have 1 negative, that's negative 1. Now just by looking at this, we could tell that our answer or our sum was going to be negative, right? Because I had 5 negatives and 4 positives. And so I had more negatives than I did positives. So my answer or my sum would be negative. Let's look here. 6 plus negative 3. Just by looking at this, is it going to be positive or negative? We should say positive, right? Because I have 6 positives and only 3 negatives. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 positives, and I only have 1, 2, 3 negatives. Let's cancel out the 0 pairs. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 0 pairs that cancel out, and all I'm left with is 1, 2, 3 positives. So 6 plus negative 3 is positive 3. We can model this with a number line. Remember, the first number tells us where to start, so I'm going to start at 4. And if I add a negative, that means go left that many spaces. So I'm going to go left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I end up at negative 1. 6 plus negative 3, I start at 6, and if I add a negative, I go left that many spaces. So go left 1, 2, 3, and you end up at 3. Here's a word problem for you. A football team loses 5 yards on the first play and then gains 8 yards on the next play. What is their total yardage? Well, if they lose yards, that means they're going backwards, which we can represent with a negative sign. So they lose 5 yards, and if they gain yardage, they're going forward. So we can use a positive sign to represent that. So we have negative 8 plus 5. As you can see, they have different signs, right? Negative and a positive. So I'm going to subtract the larger number 8 minus the smaller number 5. 8 minus 5 is 3. Next, I keep the sign of the larger number. The larger number here, the big guy, is 8, right? It's furthest away from 0. Its sign is positive because that's what the plus sign means there. It's positive 8. So my answer will have a positive sign also. It's positive 3. Now, what I can do here is move the terms around. I can say that 5 is negative and this 8 is positive. What if I do this? What if I put the 8, the positive 8, what if I put that in front of the negative 5? So it would read like this. It would be positive 8 and then minus 5. Right? Well, if the number is positive, we don't really need the positive sign in front of it. And so what this becomes is 8 minus 5. And what's 8 minus 5? 3. Right? And the reason we can move the terms around is because of the commutative property of addition, which tells us that it doesn't matter the order that we add the numbers, we'll get the same sum. Here's another word problem for you. Mark is playing a game. He gains 4 points, loses 8 points, and gains 2 points. What's his final score? Well, if he gains 4 points, that's positive. He loses 8, so I'm going to add a negative, right, because he loses 8. Then he gains 2 more, so positive 2. Now, what's his final score? Let's add the positives first. So I have 4 and 2. What's 4 plus 2? Well, that is 6. And I still need to add negative 8. Okay? Now, 6 is positive, 8 is negative. They have different signs. So I'm going to subtract and then keep the sign of the larger. So subtract 8 minus 6, which is 2, and keep the sign of the big guy. Which one's the big guy? He is, right? His sign's negative, so my answer is negative. It's actually negative 2 points. That's his final score.